All right. Always takes a minute of finagling to get up. All right. Welcome. We're going to wait a minute for folks to come on in, and I'm going to get a little more organized here. Make sure my ringer is turned off. All right. If you're coming in, hey, Debbie. If you're coming in, let me know that you're here. Love to know where you're from. We got snow last night, so if you want to tell me about your warm weather, you could. I knew it was coming, right? And it was only a few inches, but I was not ready for that. Hey, Janice. Hi, Mary. Hi, Kristen. All right. I wonder if it's... Kristen, is it snowing in Denver? My mom said she got like a dusting in Castle Rock. I'm thankful for the moisture and so ready for it to really be spring. Oh, Jean, fine. No, I'm glad it's warm somewhere. I when the weather changes often bring lambs. And I know when I put the ram out, I know that the vast majority of them should not be coming for another month. But one of those ewes went early last year and lost. I didn't own her at that point, but lost her quintuplets, and so I'm keeping an eye. And then I have that wild lamb who is pregnant, and I have no idea when she's due. So when I went to feed this morning, I always take towels out with me in case someone needs to be, warmed up or brought in or whatever. So I was ready, but no lambs this morning. So that was good. All right. Hey, Tamara. Ooh, sunny and 61. See, there's hope. There's hope for us. It is kind of gray and dreary and kind of foggy and supposed to be 69 by Monday. So I'm counting on it. All right, you guys, we're going to get started. I'm so excited about this. And as people continue to come in, hopefully you'll let me know where you're from, or if you're watching this on replay, which will be on, it'll be up in Wafa for a little while, and then it'll be over on my YouTube. I would love for people to know that. And if you're watching on YouTube and you didn't come in through Wafa, to let us know how you found us. Okay, so this is a big project and really exciting, and I'm so glad I'm not doing it alone, because I need a little accountability, as my two accountability partners know, and I love community. So this is really exciting. So I'm gonna, because the first one was kind of, there wasn't really, well, there won't really be homework, but we weren't really spinning, it was reading. I want to kind of start from the beginning. So this is the book, the Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs by Sarah Anderson. And I've spun out of this for years and have thought for a long time about doing this project, where I kind of spun my way through the book. And probably what's going to happen through this process is you're going to learn a lot about me as a spinner. If you don't know already, I'm a bit of an oversharer, and I ramble on, so expect that. So I'm not a detail person. And hey, Kitty. Oh, I'm so glad you got the book. I'm so glad people are getting the book. And I hope, if you don't want to own it, that you can find it at your library, or maybe even at a secondhand store and then pass it on. There's so much great information in here. So I started to say that I'm not really a detailed person. And I'm, um, aside from, well, aside from travel, I was going to say, I'm not, no, I don't really plan out my yarns. And so this is going to be very different and disciplined for me in a way that um, that's going to be new to me. And I'm going to try to make some commitments about what and how much that I'm going to do, even if I, write them down in secret and keep an eye on them. But I think that it's going to be really fun and I hope a little transformative. So the first chapter is on spinning singles for plying. And actually today as I thought about it, I thought we should have done the standalone singles maybe ahead, but this is how it's organized in the book, so we're going to go for it. And I need to figure out once we get into technique, I can certainly do some demos. I would love it if people posted videos of them trying those techniques. I'd like to say that singles are a no-brainer, but I did spend some time spinning what do they call them? Fat singles, and so it's not as much of a as a no-brainer as I thought. So they talk about um, thin singles and fat singles. So if you have spun for a little while, um, consistently maybe, you will find that you probably have a go-to, whatever that is. And they talk about in the book, when you start, it's thick and it's kind of nubby. Um, it is a brainer, right, Catherine? Catherine and I have had some good conversations about this already. And I'm going to bring up some questions that we came up with as we were having that conversation. So you have this go-to, and I found out through this process that mine is thinner than I thought it was. I thought that I was a thicker single kind of gal. And Toot is working on a control card for me that I'm really excited about. She's um, designing it and going to do it on the laser engraver so that I can, check again, which is something I never do. But I'm curious. And I'm curious about, how big a single will make how big a ply and those kinds of things for intentional yarns. So I found out that I spin. Isn't it a great book? It's such a great book, Jay. There's so many possibilities in here. Um, so I would be interested as you go through this first chapter and you do some intentional spinning of thin singles and then thicker singles, to be kind of conscious and interested in about what is your kind of go-to, your autopilot. What is the thickness autopilot? I also know that I am a hybrid drafter. So um, my default used to be a backward draw, a, a kind of a medium like backward draw. But I find these days that I am drafting more forward than I used to. Um, but I somebody posted today about spinning that traveler's shawl or cowl, and it's one stitch and then the back. I don't know. And people commented about how they needed something in their knitting to kind of keep them interested, and I'm the same way. I need some texture. I need some interest. I need something to keep my brain interested, or I get sleepy or bored or both. so, so I like some textured things. So when I set out to do these singles, I did a couple of things I wouldn't do again. One, I wouldn't. I spin with my sheep, so I took it out to spin with my sheep, and the matron ewes were very suspicious, and they ran to the fence, and so there was no taking a video of that. So then I took it up and spun with the lambs, and they were very interested. So what I have is not the most consistent yarn, but I'm using some really special fiber, and I want to talk about fiber today. And I'm interested in knowing what kinds of things what kinds of fibers you're thinking about spinning. So this is some really special, they're little, um, my guess, actually, I think that this was done on a blending board. It came from Jean, um, when I think when she was still only using a blending board, and I think Jean was coming today, so she can speak to this. And I didn't think until the very last minute to look up what it was, but I do have it in a message from her somewhere. Um, but there's just a little bit of flax in here, enough that, as I'm spinning it along, I'm like, oh, a little flax, and so that keeps me interested. Is hey, Jean. So I don't know if you remember, you sent this to me as a care package when I got COVID. And I have been saving them for something special, and this was the perfect. I think there were a whole variety of things, and I remember you talking about how you really like to work with color, and you knew that I liked neutral kinds of things, and this it was such a special care package. So this is what I've been spinning, and um, well, I can't. My wheel is over here, but it drafts easily. It has everything. I know it was like the kitchen sink. It's such a great combination of things. So, I think there's a little bit of merino, and I think there's maybe some mohair in here. It has a nice little slip. Um, and I when I am trying to spin consistent yarn. I like it to have a little bit of slip. I like a mohair blend. Right now um, I am blending fin and mohair, and I love that. And it's from my sheep, so there's just that touch of lanolin because I processed it myself, and so there's a little bit of a I don't know, catch to it as well. Um, okay, mohair, banana, see, yep, sounds like that. And I think that was my first introduction to CISO, which I also love. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about fiber. Since I've started that conversation, I'm curious about what you all are going to be spinning. I just finished a pretty big fiber processing project. I've combed more fiber than I need a break from combing fiber, but I always learn a lot about that. And farm fibers they're just different than commercial fibers, and so I am one of my goals in this. Even though I've had this particular breed of sheep for over a year, I haven't done I've done a little bit of spinning of the fin, but I really want to do some more. So I'm going to be playing with blends and some things like that, but blends that are, truly incorporated. Yep, I agree, Catherine. Well prepared and well incorporated. So when I talk about blends, I'm really talking about, I'm talking about, if I'm doing it myself, running it through the carder several times because I really want it to be homogenized, because I'm working on technique, which is new and different for me as well. Um, I agree, Claudia. It's a lovely combination. And I love that, Angora also gives it that little slip, but then there's that little halo as well. But I don't. But it's not. it's not that kind of heel, I think, that gets you caught up in, that fighting it with a technique. I think it's lovely to spin. Um, so tell me about what you think you're going to spin. Is it something that you have in your stash? I planned these. Um, there was a method to my madness, and part of that method was that if people were going to need to look for something specific, obviously, I wanted you to shop WAFA. So I have coordinated the chapter kickoffs a week before the WAFA shows as we go along. Oh, Margot, I'm so glad. I love to hear that. I have a little bit of that cashmere left, and I'm kind of eyeing it as well. Um, so when Catherine talks about well prepared fibers, um, I think one thing that comes to mind is commercially prepared fibers, and things that aren't necessarily a texture blend. I think we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to some more arty kinds of things as we go through. Um, okay, hang on. Okay, so Catherine used Falkland. So it's been a while since I have spun Falkland. Remind me about, I feel like it was a little bit crisp, not in a bad way. I like a little crisp yarn. I don't love something that's really greasy. Um, like I like Jacob. Um, let's see. I gotta keep reading here. Ooh, I love that idea. Um, I love to take apart things and put them back together, Sarah. So that's a wonderful idea. Plus you can make your own blends at that point. So I think that's really nice. Um, so fibers that come to mind to me, and I have spun a number of things, but clearly not everything. I like Polworth. It's a little bit, and most of the Polworth I have spun has been from fleece that I've processed. So again, those experiences are different than commercial fibers. Um, oh, Merino Shetland. Yep, I love Romney too. I think it's just such a nice. The fleece that I have that I've been spinning the Romney out of is longer. It's not as tight a crimp, but it's a really nice, smooth moving fiber. Um, let's see. Okay, so then we're going to talk about fat singles. And Catherine and I had a conversation about that, which brought up some questions. So I want to ask some. This isn't really a rhetorical question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Um, uh, so singles on their own can be a little squirrely, particularly if you have one wheel and only so many bobbins, and you need to take it off the bobbin, and you put it on a nitty and it goes boink. So, question might be, do you finish those singles before you ply them together? And I kind of looked through the book, and there wasn't really. My guess is that if she had been saying do that, it would have been covered in here. So my guess is that is not the intention. And my guess would be that you would not want to set the twist on a single if you intended to ply it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. That's my guess, and I'm very fortunate to have several wheels and plenty of bobbins. I am not a lazy Kate user. Okay, that's what I thought, Margot. I I I was trying to think of a situation where you might do that, but again, I think you want those plies to lay together rather than fight one another because they're already finished. So I'm not a lazy Kate user, but I am going to. I don't know how this is going to work for me, um, but I am intending to leave my singles on the bobbin, um, and so I guess the next question comes is, do you rest them? And if you rest them, so let's say it takes me. Okay, move the twist. Okay, which might be a good thing if you were doing a single to be a single. Um, that sounds like a wonderful blend, Janice. How exciting. Um, right, Catherine? It did. It like boinked together, right? And then it was, it was kind of a thing, kind of it was a noodle kind of thing, right? Um, okay, so see, I've lost my train of thought now. Um, oh, so I was asking about like resting yarns. So if I spin a single one day and then 2 days later I spin the next one, can I start plying them together right away, or do I need to let that second one rest on the bobbin? I can you tell that I am not a technical spinner? I'm really not a technical spinner. But and so part of this that excites me about this because of that is for us to be spinning similar yarns and then comparing what we got. Okay, I missed I missed the comment that you're okay, hang on a second. So if you are okay, so Margot, are you saying so okay, I have to read this out loud. So if you are over twisted in some area, finishing will help with adjusting the twist. Right, because it travels that twist to balance itself out. I think that's what you're saying. So uh so if I've over twisted a single, I might finish it before plying. I love that, Jean. Me too sometimes. I, but I also think I know this is like way down a deep rabbit hole, so I apologize to, to those of you. Okay, great, Margot. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, see, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, see, sometimes Friday afternoon, my brain is just spent. Um, oh, I know. So, I think the other thing that I'm learning. Oh, wait. Oh, no, do not finish. Okay, all right. But you could take it off the bobbin if you knew that you had, and I guess put it on the nitty knotty and control taking it off the nitty knotty. Sometimes when I do that, I'll put one end on a hanger and I'll loop a hanger on the other end. I happen to have a line here that I dry yarn and stuff on, and I'll just hang it. Not because I'm trying to weight it down, but I want to be able to hook, both of those ends and not have it being a snarled mess. And that's one way that I do it. Okay, so the other thing that I was gonna say is I think that gauging twist for me is going to be an interesting thing because I will often think that I have really twisted it up pretty good, and then I'll ply it and I'll be like, oh, that's not as tight as I thought it was gonna be. Uh, because it was really curling back on itself when I was spinning. So I guess that would, you know, it would change that depending upon the fiber that you use. Okay, so if you do that, if you wind from one bobbin onto another bobbin, does that still spread that over twist out? Okay, hang on, I gotta read Joy's comments here. So weird to have a conversation like this, but I'm so glad you all are participating. It's lovely. Okay. Oh, Joy, I want to see a picture of that. That sounds awesome. One time early on in my spinning career, um, I was plying from a ball, from both ends of a ball, and something happened in the middle. So I was upstairs here, um, just trying to, like hang on to the part that was good, and Toot was down the stairs and I don't know, outside or around the corner. We finally got it figured out. So, I love to ply from a ball of yarn, but boy, you can get yourself in trouble if you're not careful. Okay, so it would distribute it some from one single to the other. Right, right, Joy? Oh my word. Well, if you ever do it again, and I will commit to, we have to take pictures because that's hilarious. And and only something spinners would really understand. Okay. So fat singles and the slub yarn, and I was going to um, so this was another question that I kind of after, from the conversation that Catherine and I had about what the difference is between a slub yarn and thick and thin. And maybe thick and thin, it means that that it's just going to be a single. So I brought this, it's not really a show and tell, but kind of. So this was a thick and thin that I spun. It's the fiber is Erino, so it's merino and Erie. Thanks for joining us, Claudia. We'll talk to you later. And I simply could not spin it consistently. And so I gave it and let it do what it wanted to do, and it's definitely a thick and thin. And some of it is overspun. And it would be interesting. I have finished it and felted it a little bit, so probably too late in the process. But it might be interesting. I don't know if I get that closer, if that helps or not. Not really. It might be interesting to see how it plied. So I want to know if you have thoughts, or even an answer to that question, what the difference is between the slub yarn. And I think the purpose of that, this bit around, slub yarn getting you to fat singles is, changing that weight of the yarn as you spin. Um, and I um, often do that intentionally, not necessarily as a thick and thin, but I do the same thing with, under twist and over twist. And I don't know, core spin and coil spin on the same yarn and things like that. And I think some of those technique kinds of things, as you flow from, larger to smaller or twist to less, helps that muscle memory. Um, I was also thinking, as I read, she talks about, the place that you should wear clothing or have a lap um, cloth that is contrasting to the color of fiber that you're spinning, because you're looking at that triangle, that drafting triangle. And I thought, I wonder if I even look as I spin. And I haven't had a chance to, I think I was looking at that last night, and then I haven't had a chance to sit down at my wheel today. But, I think part of this is going to be just being more aware and conscious of what I'm doing. And then, making conscious decisions based on what my end result is going to be. Um, so I don't know. I'm excited about it. So what else is on your mind today? Okay. Joy has sent me a picture. Seriously, it would be really funny if some of that was in that fluorescent or whatever. You turn off the lights and you could just see the yarn all wrapped around the room. That's awesome. Okay. So I'm trying to think. Okay, I do have some notes here. Let me see if I've gotten to everything. Okay, I asked about finishing singles. I said I'm gonna try to leave mine on the bobbin. I didn't. I don't know if anybody said anything about whether the resting thing. I don't. I I'm not usually intentional about my resting of my yarns on the bobbin or not. And I am usually plying from a cake that I've wound, whether it's, from both ends or two of them. I don't usually leave them on the bobbins, so this will be different. Beginner mind. Good question, Joy. I like I said, I realized that I was a thinner spinner than I thought for my go-to. I'm gonna. I don't think it really says, but I think it has to do with, the difference between your thin single and your fat single. And I am anxiously awaiting the control card. I think I have a WPI tool. Um, I was thinking that was a control, but it's not. It's a heddle, a little tiny heddle. Um, so I'm excited about having this control card that has um, widths on it, so that I can see what I'm spinning. My guess is that I am not spinning lace weight even for my thin. Um, oh, that's an interesting idea, Catherine. Yeah, I didn't see anything, Joy, either. But I do think uh, I'm gonna go on, If my go-to is this, then I may need to decide, is that my fat single or my thin single, and how I want to spin one side or the other to get whatever technique that is. Um, okay, Kitty. Yep. Uh, I think that, well, and that would certainly, the toilet paper roll would hold your singles at tension in a way that a cake would not hold all of them on tension. Well, most of us ply from two singles or a chain ply. Uh, I'm not sure what your question is, Joanne. Um, it depends on the yarn that we're making, um, and well, it depends on the yarn that we're making, um, and the other thing that I love about the book, if you haven't gotten the book, there are spinner cards in the back for each of the yarns. I haven't torn mine apart yet, and I've had the book for years. But I think that that's kind of cool, and I suppose it feels like maybe these could be used as a control card. Because I'll have to look and compare them with well, let's see. I was going to look and see if the card is the same. The card is the same size as the photo in the book. So I don't know if that's a good control card or not. So I'm just gonna go with some are gonna be thin and some are gonna be thick, and it could be that for some yarns what is thin for something could be thick for something else. Okay, so Margot is saying that you could use those cards as a control card. So that's great. I think that's a great way to think about it, and and to kind of, at the very least, to get an idea of what you're spinning now and where you have to go to get something fatter or something thinner than that. Okay, so Joanne, I want to answer your question. But I'm not sure what you're asking about the two singles or the chain ply. So I would, if you can help me understand what you're asking. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the schedule, and then I want to, if anybody wants to talk a little bit about goals. The only other thing that I had on my notes here was, are you gonna, is it gonna be colored before or after? And most of us use dyed fiber, but not all of us. So, that kind of opens up the possibilities as well. Dyeing afterwards, there are things about the integrity of the yarn that you want to think about as well. Okay, so today is the 18th. We did the kickoff. Next week is the show. So the show and tell, the Zoom show and tell for this one will be on the 9th. And the other couple days ago, I posted the event for this one, and the event for the 9th. And I will try, I'm notoriously awful about posting events before the day of my event, but I'm going to try to be better about that. And I do have a calendar that I'm working on. I just need to get the last couple of weeks on, but it rolls into January, and I didn't have a big calendar to look at, and I wanted to make sure that I did it right because I take a little break in December. And then I wanted to, kind of get back into some routine. So show and tell for the chapter before happens 2 weeks before the show. The chapter kickoff happens the week before the show, and the dedicated post. Okay, hang on just a second to it. The dedicated post, I struck it in the middle between the kickoff and the show and tell. And hopefully people will, post pictures or video, whatever it is on that post. But I also want you to please post in the meantime. Whatever you're doing, you're picking fiber or you whatever. And somebody, maybe it was Joanne, said that I might have put 2 hashtags out there. So I need to go back and make sure. I think the hashtag is intentional twist, and I did that because when I searched it on Facebook and Instagram, there was nothing. But I will go back and make sure. Okay, since we're talking about oh, yes, you're right. I did see that chain ply is in this chapter. And there is some plying in this chapter. She talks about plying from a center pole. She talks about Andean plying. I love the idea of Andean plying, and the one time it worked for me, it was great, but the rest of the times I cut off the circulation in my fingers. So I'm very good at that, no matter how I try. Let's see. I feel like there was something else. Oh, this hawser technique at the very end is kind of interesting as well, and it's a lot of singles. I think there are 4 singles, which leads me to the last thing on my note, and that has to do with because I weave on the little loom a lot. I think in smaller quantities of yarn, which is not always the case for spinners. We sit down and we think I'm going to spend 500 yards of, whatever it is so that I can make, I don't know, whatever, or sell it, or, whatever that is. But I don't think that there is any reason that you can't spin small bits of yarn. I think it's an excellent place to start. I think it can be a means to an end. So, and if you're spinning a technique that you don't love, you don't have to spin 100 yards of it or 50 yards of it or whatever it is. You can do that. Recognize, I think, that it takes a little while to get into kind of a rhythm of that. So give yourself enough time, enough yardage to get into the rhythm of it. But I encourage, if you don't want to, that filling the bobbin doesn't have to be the goal. Excuse me. Or filling the bobbin can be the goal. But what you're going to get out of that is 4 test, the fat single or the thin single or whatever for 4 test yarns. because I suspect that I will find some techniques in here or that I don't love, or yarns that I think I might not ever make again. And what's in the demos, the tests, the swatches that are in here are knitted. I feel like there may be some that are also crocheted, but there's uh, very little or no weaving in this book. So if you're a weaver like I am, you're going to use the yarn differently, and it will act differently than if you're, knitting or crocheting. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but just things to think about. Okay, I got to catch up here. Yep, I agree, Catherine. And that brings up an excellent point that, spinning this with this fiber could be one thing and very different with something else. Spinning with, something that doesn't have a lot of memory, but has lots of luster, is going to look and act one way, as opposed to, something that's lofty and has lots of air in it, and each of those things lends itself, but there just isn't any reason, even if the result is this squishy thing, that you couldn't spin that with mohair that doesn't have that kind of loft. Okay, Jennifer asks, what will we post? What we work on. Okay, so you might be asking about the dedicated post, and the dedicated post for this one is going to happen on the 30th of April. So either I'll make a post or Jean will make a post, because Jean has very graciously offered to help me with this. With the kind of that graphic logo that hopefully you're getting used to looking at. And then, and then I hope we can just flood it with all kinds of things that we're trying, or fibers that we're using, or, whatever it is that is a part of this project. I would love to see, wherever you are. And there's no judgment, there's no expectation for you to have things, there's no expectation for people to come to show and tell with things to show and tell, but if you want to, please do. This is a work at your own pace, whatever you're working on. I'm excited to hear about it. It's, this is what it's like to be a part of a community. So that post will happen in WAFA, in the community, on the community WAFA page. And then I will, I'm trying to think about where I wrote down the hashtag. I think I have an idea, but I'll look for that after we're done here, and I'll put it in the comments here, and then I will get the whole calendar up. I'll try to get that up tonight, and I'll put the hashtag on there, and I'll start trying to put the hashtag on everything I'm doing. Whoever it was that brought that to my attention, I really appreciate it, and I want to make sure that whatever we're using, that it's something consistent. Yeah, community WAFA page is where that's going to be. Okay, let me see if I've missed anything else. Yeah, Tamara, I think so too. And I think, again, because I, weave little things. I love to weave with like just little interesting things. And sometimes I knit that way as well. Okay. Awesome, Sarah. That sounds great. Okay, so that's what's happening. Today we kicked off. The 30th will be the intentional spinning post. And then the show and tell for this one will be the 9th of May. Meaning that chapter 3 kicks off on the 16th of May. And then it must be maybe a shorter, maybe a longer. The dedicated post for that's the 30th. And then the show and tell for that is, I think I'm ahead of myself, but I think that's June 13th. So anyway, I have a list, a post list almost completely ready to do with that. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I have some Icelandic lamb roving as well that I'm gonna pull out. I'm gonna pull out all kinds of stuff that I have around here now that I've kind of gone through and I know what I have in the boxes. As embarrassed as I am about some of it, I am gonna pull some interesting stuff out and use it. I'm excited about it. Okay, any questions that you all have? I hope you're excited about this. Like I said, please don't feel like you have to wait until we do that dedicated post. I'll let you know what the hashtag is so we can, search it and follow what everybody else is doing. This video will go up on the videos in WAFA just like it always does. But because Facebook is taking them down, everything now every 30 days, I needed a place to park that, so I'm parking it on my YouTube channel, Timber and Twine. So the whole project will live there, and eventually maybe, well, anyway, it will live there at this point. Okay, the hashtag is dedicated. Okay. Do you think it's intentional spinning? Okay. I will look and see what I did because I can't remember. Okay, you guys, I'm so excited about this. I think this is going to be really fun. I know that I didn't really do a demo today. And, as we go along, I can certainly do some of that, or other people could do some of that. We're learning as we go. And I think that's really exciting. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I'm so excited about this project and excited to be doing with you. So, all right. Have a wonderful weekend.